Next, warring over water. It's a battle being fought between haves and have-nots all over the country, particularly in drought-stricken areas. NewsHour correspondent Spencer Michaels reports from California.
As fires raced over the parched Southern California landscape, burning homes and ruining crops, the culprits most often blamed for the disaster were fierce Santa Ana winds and the lack of rain. Water is the lifeblood of Southern California, where 2/3 of the state's people live, and this has been the driest year on record. To make things worse, a federal judge ordered that less water be pumped from the northern to the southern part of the state, a decision that is exacerbating the water shortage and has forced some communities to put restrictions on outdoor water use. The judge made his ruling because of what's been happening in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, east of San Francisco, where most of California's fresh water passes on its way either to the ocean or to farms and cities to the south. Nearly every day, state fish and game biologists troll here for fish.
Yeah, they all appear to be American shad.
They were hoping to find one particular fish in their nets, the Delta smelt, a tiny, short-lived fish that is a federally protected species.
53, 52.
But after spending a whole day on the boat, not
58,
a single smelt was found.
58. Nowadays, Delta smelt are pretty hard to catch. Like in the 1970s, they used to be one of the most abundant fish around, so it's kind of scary now.
Environmental groups cite the disappearance of the smelt as evidence that powerful pumps that suck up Delta water and send it south via massive canals were chewing up and killing the fish. And not just the smelt is at risk, says Bill Bennett, a research ecologist at the University of California at Davis, who studies the fish.
This fish has clearly become, I would say, a lightning rod or poster child for an assemblage of species that live in the low salinity zone of the Delta. And in the last few years, these populations have pretty much hit rock bottom.
Actually, the entire Delta is considered under threat, which in turn threatens the state's water supply. Despite plans to spend billions fixing the Delta, strengthening the levees, improving the quality of the water, which is polluted by salt intruding from the ocean, and saving the smelt, not much has changed. So environmentalists sued to protect the fish as a way to protect the Delta, and the judge agreed with them, ordering the state to pump up to 1/3 less water through the Delta to Southern California.
And it's the hub of the entire Bay Delta ecosystem. It's the hub of California's water system.
Barry Nelson, a policy analyst for the environmental group Natural Resources Defense Council, was active in the lawsuit against state and federal water officials.
There's been an unstated policy in California for the last 50 years, and that is we can always take a little more water out of the Delta next year. And we've hit the limits of that.
For a century, cities and agriculture have vied for water, which has nurtured the state's spectacular agriculture and population growth. You just have to follow the water to see the battle lines. The water starts here in the Sierra Nevada mountains and flows along 2 rivers into the Delta. Then it either goes west to San Francisco Bay in the Pacific Ocean or heads to the south, which has little water of its own, through one of the world's largest and most complex water conveyance systems. In Northern California near Sacramento, tomatoes and other crops flourish on Spencer Bay's farm. And although he currently has enough water for his crops, he resents the power of the South to usurp northern water.
You look at the southern part of the state, they're in need of water, and they have the voting power. So us as farmers in the north, we just kind of hold our own and hope for the best.
This is a scene that has driven Northern Californians crazy for about half a century and fueled California's fabled water wars. A lush green golf course in arid Southern California, which gets much of its water from the north.
Yes, we do have golf courses. Yes, we do have swimming pools.
Maureen Stapleton is general manager of the San Diego County Water Authority.
It's part of the quality of life, but it doesn't mean that we're being inefficient or wasteful of water. Many of the golf courses you drove by today are using recycled water.
San Diego County, with 3 million people and growing fast, imports 80% of its water. As a result of the fires, they've asked people to limit their water use in cleanup. In order to conserve water, agencies are recycling about 5% of sewer water for use on lawns and gardens, and they're experimenting with desalination plants.
This is the 20-gallon challenge here.
Which is what?
And these are 5-gallon buckets, and this represents the water that the average person uses per day.
Stapleton is asking for voluntary, not mandatory, cutbacks.
And what we're asking is that each person in San Diego County save 4 of these buckets, 20 gallons, which is about 12% of their total water use.
Such measures fall far short, says Steve ERIE, a water expert at UC San Diego.
Mandatory rationing, mandatory conservation, whatever you call it, in terms of drinking water, indoor water, etc., needs to be seriously discussed as the next step. It shouldn't be dismissed the way that it has. This is a crisis.
We are not in a crisis. What we're in is a dry or a drought condition. I think that mandatory conservation has its place. The first stage is to ask for voluntary conservation.
The Metropolitan Water District, which distributes northern water throughout the South, says it hopes to avoid rationing water to its 18 million customers. But its general manager says that although there has been enough water to fight fires, reservoirs are rapidly being drained, and that could threaten the state's long-term water supply.